And so being able to have an AI do that stuff, because so much of it is somewhat mechanical, right? Like there is definitely artistic expression in creating 3D assets, but there is also a lot of it that's just very technical. You got to think about topology and whatever. So it's going to be huge, right? Because when people can create, whatever it is that they can imagine, when they have the flexibility of working with an AI to do that, it's just going to make it that much cheaper and easier to get this content out there for people to create different kinds of games. But imagine when anybody could create that game, right? You'll have a lot more options. It's almost like writing, right? There's so many stories out there right now. It does make it hard sometimes to find a really good book that you love. But you have options, right? You have the ability to tap into all these different stories from people with different histories and experiences. And that's huge because as long as somebody knows how to write, they can communicate their story. We haven't had that in gaming.
Don't worry, we are friends.
And with that being said, welcome back to the FRENS Validator YouTube show. I'm yours, Juri Maibaum, and this show is the hub that brings together crypto pioneers, exciting projects. And today I'm joined by Lex Avelino from Passage, and Passage is the Metaverse game in the cosmos. And yeah, Lex, thank you for joining.
Oh, it's my pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and showing off Passage, if you want to put it like this. And actually, that's your third time now on the show. The first time we have done this was in 2021, shortly before Cosmoverse 1.
Yeah.
Then the Metaverse hype was just ongoing. So yeah, maybe let's get everyone on one page who's maybe into the Cosmos and Passage generally. And to give us like a broad overview, I really love the quote that you have in your white paper, which reads, "Video production has been democratized and gaming is likely next." What does that mean in regards to Passage and the Metaverse?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the biggest kind of theme that people can see throughout the lifespan of Passage, as we've been working on this platform, kind of the things that we've learned and are trying to bring into this, is we want to make this more accessible, right? More accessible just as an experience, right? That people can get in with just one click. You don't have to have some big high-end gaming machine. It's all streamed. So, somebody who's on their phone or on their iPad, an old laptop, everybody has the exact same experience jumping into Passage, right? And the same thing is going to happen over time, not only with the experience itself, but with building experiences, right? One of the big things that we're working on is this world builder based around Unreal Engine that essentially simplifies the whole building process. And one of the things that we can get into as well, as we get there, is this whole idea of AI content creation, right? And we've seen more and more stuff being made with AI on kind of the video production side of things. We've seen how video production has become more and more accessible. And then the world of 3D has become more accessible with open source tools like Blender now competing with industry standards like Maya and 3ds Max. So there's a huge opportunity getting into not just video production, but actually 3D production and gaming, right? The whole interactive space. Unreal Engine has a huge system of blueprints, which is what they call their kind of drag and drop game programming system. And they released, Creator 2.0, which is their creative tools within the Fortnite ecosystem where people can build on and around the Fortnite functionality. Now, the big thing that's remaining is how do people create 3D assets in a way that's accessible, right? We've seen how AI has changed that. We can get into kind of like some of the stuff that's really revolutionizing not just 3D content creation, but also the gaming content creation. So there's a lot of things there, but really the theme for Passage is just we want to make this easier for people, right? We want to make this open to more people so that there's more opportunity for people to create, to get new ideas on the market, to create games that we couldn't before because you would have had to spend this and this budget on a development team and all these types of things. So Passage really wants to open this up, but there's definitely going to be like kind of a progression to this and how we kind of open those doors, and we can get into that.
Yeah, 100%. So to quickly also reflect on that, Passage is not only about this Metaverse theme, but also about gaming and providing new opportunities. Because as you mentioned, if you wanted to produce a game in the like now actually also, and it should be somehow playable. You spend millions of dollars, and then it's not even one of the best games out there, most likely. So yeah, let's dive deeper into this in a second. Before we do that, what I also really love about the Passage vision is that you guys also consider providing opportunities in the real world, because when people, especially the average Joe, hears the term metaverse, everyone is thinking about these goggles and people just sitting in their apartment
Pro.
and doing nothing. Exactly. But you want to break with those rules. So can you like talk a little bit more about you providing opportunities in the real world as well with the metaverse?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because we have a really unique experience. We've done development in all of these spaces. We've worked in AR. We worked on projects with a game jam with Niantic, right? The people who did Pokemon Go. We've done all sorts of different projects in the VR space, in like different types of virtual content, right? Everything from 3D animation and game production, Unreal Engine, Unity, and for us, we love all those things. We love the technology, but we also recognize that they're exciting and they're interesting because of the ways they reflect the real world, right? And people love this idea of being able to have this kind of control, a creative freedom in the virtual space. And I love the freedom of just this, right? Being able to communicate across the world, right? There's so many powerful things that come to us through this mode of communication. But at the same time, it's cool because there's actually a real person on the other end of this conversation and we can connect from really far away. That's awesome, right? So for us, the physical experience has always been fundamentally important. And a lot of our background is in doing virtual production for physical events, right? A lot of the events that we help to design and create, and even, we did everything from 100-foot vinyl prints that go on the outside of a building to make it look like it's made of Legos, or we do 3D assets to create neon lights. There's a bunch of things where we've connected kind of the virtual and the physical, and we'll do like virtual walkthroughs of a space and different designs that get created virtually before they're produced physically. And so for us, there's always been this really cool connection between the physical and the virtual. We did this for Warner Brothers, Dallas Cowboys, Red Bull. We've worked with a bunch of really cool clients in the consumer space. And so we always wanted to push back to the physical, right? So again, as Passage progresses, first we want it to be this tool that connects people remotely, right? That makes it easier to, work from wherever you want to collaborate from across the world, things like that. But then as it progresses, we also wanted to push people back into real world circumstances, right? Imagine being able to attend a, virtual event, right? And there's a group that hosts virtual events. But then if you attend enough of the virtual ones, you might get a special access pass, an NFT inside Passage that you could then scan on your phone to get access to a physical event, right? Like being able to connect things like that. Or you go to a physical event, and there's an overlapping virtual event where people can attend and even like be on screens. Imagine you've got this big, giant, vertical monitor where you walk up and you can see kind of almost like a portal into another space, the virtual people attending, and they can see you from inside the virtual space, right? This kind of like connection where it's like, again, it's an overlap, right? It's not one or the other because you recognize there's benefits to both. But being able to just bring people together in different ways. So being able to find ways to tie back to the physical and push people to, personal relationships and human connection, that's what this has all been about. And fundamentally, the reason we made Passage the way we did, for people who have been inside, when you get in and you look around, some of the first experience people have is like, oh, you're here too, right? Like we're here. Like there's a sense of place, right? And we've emphasized this kind of human way of connecting where you look around, you can tell where people are looking. When I'm looking at my screen, it's like, I'm looking at Yuri, I'm not looking at Yuri, right? And it's just like, this is it, right? Like nobody really knows who I'm looking at. Chances are you're looking at yourself most of the time, right? Just staring at your little, selfie cam in the corner. But in Passage, it's different because there is this kind of immersion, right? You're looking into a space. You have to turn to see people. People can tell when you're paying attention. So this human element and the physical element are really important. And that's a big part of kind of where we want to push people as this progresses over time.
Yeah, and I think this is really how the metaverse narrative completely plays out, because this is what I had in mind when I've heard the first time about the metaverse, and especially after COVID, this has become a big, big thing, where people are now able to go to places even though they are sitting at home, and to make all of this a little bit more realistic, or to bring it more into the real world, would be
Yeah.
a real game changer.
Well, and real quick, another thing I've seen, because I've seen people comment and be like, oh, this is lame. Go outside and touch grass, right? And I'm like, I'm all about that, right? But can you go outside and touch grass when you're in an office 9 to 5, right? And you're doing the grind and you've got to go be away from your family, away from your home, right? To work. Wouldn't it be better if you had more control over your time and could work from home because your collaboration tool is more interactive, right? And for us, my team, we've been building the 3 division studio is a team that has been building Passage and has worked with a lot of these, really cool studios. And we've been building for 7 years, right? And that whole time, from day one, we were remote. I have had employees that I've worked with for 4 or 5 years that I've never met in person. And so even before, all the COVID craziness, people were collaborating remotely. And I think sometimes people in different parts of the world don't realize how many people in India, in the Philippines, in Ukraine, in these different parts of the world work almost entirely remotely, right? And they're constantly having to connect with people, but the tools that they're using don't give them the ability to represent themselves the way they'd like, right? To really have a sense of presence, of connection, right? So that's why it's so interesting, because I think a lot of people, it's like, for one, a lot of this was happening before COVID, right? And now it's just, there's already more opportunities depending on where you are in the world to use this, to leverage this. So I think a lot of people don't realize like the opportunity that's here, whether or not you want to go touch grass. But again, this is not about like living your life in the virtual world. It's about, we live in an international economy, right? We live in a place where we have the ability to collaborate. The question is, what kind of tools are you using, and what's the quality level at which you're able to interact?
Yeah, I fully agree on this. And I also think not only about touching grass, it's also about work in that sense. Because imagine you are on your honeymoon, but then there's like a super important crypto conference for you that you have to attend because your project is raising right now. Then you can still say, hey, look, I'm going to attend the conference for 1 or 2 hours, and then I'm back on honeymoon again, for example. Or something for people who can't afford to, I don't know, for example, if Denver is in a month from now, to fly to
Yep.
Denver. Super expensive. The hotels are super expensive. The flight is expensive. So yeah, it's, I think, not only about touching grass, but also facilitating the real world.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that's the whole thing too, is it's like, it's all about compromises somewhere, right? If you drive to a job, to a 9 to 5, and you're away from your family, from your home for 8, 9 hours a day, that's a compromise, right? You're doing that so that you can provide, right? But at the same time, you know, ideally, I would rather compromise on the work interaction, right? And so, I don't, yes, in some ways it'd be better to connect personally with my work team, but I'd rather be able to spend time with my family. So this gives me the best balance, right? Where I could invest in my team in the most face-to-face way. And what's so cool is like, we've been using Passage for collaboration for almost 4 years now. We've been inside Passage world talking in a way that feels more interactive, more face-to-face, for a long time, right? So it's cool because we've been able to have that firsthand experience about how this is different, rather than like, okay, then the alternative is Zoom, right? Or Google Meets or something like that, right? So this isn't about, are you going to live in the virtual world? Are you going to live in the real world, right? It's just, well, what tools are you using? Because we all have to spend some time doing this. It's just, is it going to be a good experience or not?
Yeah, fully agree on this. And in a couple of minutes, we will also see a demo of Passage to give the viewers and listeners kind of a feeling of what this new world will look
Yep.
like. But let's get back to a point that you've mentioned a couple of minutes before, which was AI, and how AI changes the whole game in the gaming industry. You mentioned that AI, and I completely agree on this, changed the content production game entirely in the past couple of months. It's actually almost scary how much AI changed the content
Yeah.
production game, because I've seen interviews of Cristiano Ronaldo talking not so nice things about Lionel Messi, even though he never said this, but
Right.
AI just manipulated this. So can you talk a little bit about what the gaming industry can expect of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for one, we've seen how AI can impact 2D, right? Because there is a level of complexity getting into 3 dimensions, because with pixels on a screen, you're talking about a flat video. There's so much that the AI can do, just basically predicting where one color should be near another color based off of what it's seen in the past, right? You're talking about something flat. When you get into 3 dimensions, right, and you have vertexes in 3 dimensional space on 3 axes, it's an order of magnitude more complicated, right? It would be like calculating like 100, 1,000 layers of video deep, right? Because now you're talking about depth as well. So it is definitely more complicated to create, to train and teach these algorithms to understand, or to be able to interpret what something should look like, because it needs that much more data to go off of, right? And so the work going into that, you've got to be able to feed in 3D information. Creating the assets that you're teaching it with are also more complicated than feeding it 2D images, right? So there's a lot of things that go into that make it difficult. We've talked personally to leaders, founders, CEOs who are building different AI solutions in 3D. And the one that we've seen that is most promising is Sortium, our AI partner. And the way that we're basically collaborating to integrate Sortium AI into Passage is they're going to, right now, what they have just off the shelf is AI texture generation, right? So being able to map 3 dimensional textures onto a model with AI, right? The idea is that you can put in prompts just like you would in Midjourney or something like that, and pick different areas of the model, and the AI will generate a texture that makes sense on that 3 dimensional space. And it's really cool the way it works. We've already used this in a number of projects. And the way it's going to work in Passage is that, you can grab, a shirt or an asset off the marketplace, the Passage marketplace, pull it into Midjourney and be like, I want this to be unique, right? I don't want this to look like everybody else's asset, right? Whether it's, a couch for the space that you're designing, or a rock, or whatever it may be. You're able to customize that right off the bat so that it feels unique from any other asset. What they're going to be releasing next, that we've been working with them behind the scenes to test some of this stuff, is 3D asset generation, where you're not only generating the texture, but the mesh itself, the 3D model. And it's really cool the way this works. Whether it's, 3D asset generation from a prompt, right? Which is going to just like totally change the way people create assets. Because the whole process, as somebody who's been a 3D artist for over a decade, it's complicated, right? There's a lot that goes into creating a 3D model. A lot you have to think about in terms of like topology, the flow of the vertices, right? So that you don't get weird like pinching or shading. And so being able to have an AI do that stuff, because so much of it is somewhat mechanical, right? Like there is definitely artistic expression in creating 3D assets. But there is also a lot of it that's just very technical. You got to think about topology and whatever. So it's going to be huge, right? Because when people can create, whatever it is that they can imagine, when they have the flexibility of working with an AI to do that, it's just going to make it that much cheaper and easier to get this content out there for people to create different kinds of games, right? One of my favorite genres that's popped up in the last, couple of years here is the extraction shooter genre. And it's like, I'm like looking everywhere to find, good versions of this genre. And, the super hardcore people go into Tarkov. The more casual guys went into DMZ and Call of Duty. And there's some stuff in between, right? I've seen some stuff that looks more like Fortnite. So it's more on the casual side. But DMZ, Call of Duty is not supporting DMZ anymore. I'm looking for an alternative, right? And there really aren't a lot out there. But imagine when anybody could create that game, right? You'll have a lot more options. It's almost like writing, right? There's so many stories out there right now. It does make it hard sometimes to find a really good book that you love. But you have options, right? You have the ability to tap into all these different stories from people with different histories and experiences. And that's huge, because as long as somebody knows how to write, they can communicate their story. We haven't had that in gaming, right? because the barrier to entry, it might as well be Latin in the Middle Ages, right? Like that's how people feel about game development right now. And it's become more and more accessible as we have new tools and builders and whatnot, but it's still a lot of work. And chances are you're still using somebody else's 3D assets because you got to buy some stock stuff off the marketplace, especially if you're an indie developer. All that stuff's going to change. And we're trying to make this accessible to people right inside your browser, right? The beauty of Passage, like I said, is it's all streamed. So it's a one-click experience and you're in. And I can show here real quick. I'll just pull this up while I'm talking so you guys can see what it looks like. But this is the, what I'm sharing here is the Passage world builder. Let me just resize this window real quick. And this is just a time lapse, but you'll see both the actual builder as well as what it looks like when you're in the Passage world. So this will loop back around in a second here, and you'll get to see also like the building process. But if you've ever actually seen a screenshot of Unreal Engine, then like it's pretty complicated. There's so many like dialogues and like different options and things. Like just finding where are my models, like where are the like things that I put into the scene can be really complicated. So what we've done is we've built a world building tool on top of the Unreal Engine structure, so that you can get all the best of Unreal Engine, but at the same time you're able to simplify the process. It becomes really intuitive for your everyday user who can open a PDF, right? Like if you can go and put something together in Canva or whatever, another drag and drop tool, this is going to be super simple for people. And the idea is also that you don't have to download a bunch of applications to run this. You don't have to have a big like gaming PC to be able to run this. This is something where it opens up in the browser, it's streamed onto your computer, and it's building in Unreal Engine, but you're accessing it through the browser, right? So this is all a streamed experience. And I can show a little bit of what that looks like as well. But the whole idea being, this is really going to change the way not only people experience these types of worlds and go to events, interactions, and things like that, but the way these things are created as well.
I really, really encourage all of those who are listening to the pod right now to watch this part of the video on YouTube after listening to the podcast, because it's very, very sweet and gives you a very good imagination of what the process looks like, because the setup phase really looks like very simplistic from outside. It reminds me a lot of Sims, but when you're like in the game and walk around, it looks more like GTA or Far Cry or something, because it looks so
I love that.
realistic.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. Yeah, it is more like Sims because, again, the goal is that this is accessible, right? That people are able to actually figure this out, and that we don't get in the way of that creative expression.
Yeah, and I think especially like for people who, for example, say, hey, we want to organize a small spontaneous crypto meetup or something. This could be like very, very dope to say, hey, let's organize a crypto meetup in the desert or in the snow or whatever. So yeah, the possibilities here are endless in that sense. But that's you mentioned something previously about how this be super cool for game developers who now can say, hey, I can launch a product or a game with a little effort. But I think that's also a very romantic vision here, because one entity or one category of entities will also profit from that a lot with AI, which are the big gaming companies. And I just looked something up. So the highly anticipated game GTA 6, analysts estimate that this game will cost $2 billion at the end of the day. So just to draw us a picture here, how much can these costs decrease with AI?
That's a great question. I mean, okay, a texture artist, right? Just by itself, just the things that are already possible today. Now, again, all this is going to improve over time, right? So the level of texture you can create right now with AI, can somebody spending, a week of time create, more unique hand-drawn textures or things like that, right? Of course, right? Right now, the AI is slowly, progressing to the point where it'll be able to create at the quality level of a human, right? And again, there's always going to be compromises, right? That's the other thing too, is just because these things are available, it doesn't mean everybody's going to use them, depending on what style they're going for, like how they're trying to create what they want it to look like. So it's always a balance of, okay, I can get this to look the way I want it to, or at least close enough, right? With, this much effort, or I can spend, a week, 2 weeks logging through this problem to get it to look exactly how I want it. So it'll always be a balance. But right now, I mean, if you think about what does a texture artist cost, and I know what a texture artist costs, you could be spending $80,000 a year or more. And if you think about how many people are working just on the 2D side, right? Either in Substance Designer or Substance Painter, like creating the texturing assets for characters, for environment assets, things like that. A lot of environment stuff is actually scanned now, which is cool. So you do have a lot of that's the whole photogrammetry side of things as well, which is really interesting. And then, but they have to be hand optimized, right? So the scans you get are super high. So that's another area that AI could improve, is the whole optimization process. So think about how many technical artists you could pull off of a team if we had AI able to retopologize. And some of that stuff already exists, actually. AI retopology, things like that. So, I mean, you're talking easily 20% of a team. Now, that isn't to say, I know a huge portion of those budgets are like marketing or things like that, right? But in terms of just the production itself, even right now, just giving like the tools that already exist, probably 20 to 30% could be reduced by AI, right? So you're talking about, more than $500 million. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for big studios for sure. But then on the other hand, when, 5 guys in a garage can go and build a game that feels as high quality, right? But they produced it in half the time with, 1/1000th of the budget, right? And maybe they can't produce quite as much content, right? Or whatever it may be. Because again, there's still going to be limitations. But when they can make an experience that is like frighteningly similar to the AAA experience because of the tools that AI offers, then the beauty of this is that, again, it does begin to democratize gaming, where people can compete with these larger studios. And that's why I've seen a lot of people complaining about, like, especially people in the art world, like, oh, AI is, ruining this or that or the other. And I totally understand when it comes to like copyright and integrity things, like sourcing data ethically, right? In a way that doesn't compromise other people's intellectual property, right? Totally get those types of things. That's 100% legit. But then on the side of just like, oh, this is gonna like take people's jobs, it's like, as a small team, right? As somebody who has worked as a freelancer all the way up to having, a studio with 20 plus employees and 30 plus contractors at various times, right? And like I understand how much of a help that is, right? And how I'm competing a lot of times when we're doing studio work, right? So the 3 Division studio and the stuff that they're doing, when we're pitching for jobs with Warner Brothers, we're competing with 200 plus, 1,100 plus employee teams in New York and London, right? Like that's what we're competing with on the design front. And if I've got a little boost in my corner because I've got an AI that can help me to produce assets or video or whatever, right? To push production further, that's helping the little guys too, right? So that creates a job for me and my 20 employees, because we can now compete with the people who are, who have the big budgets and things like that. So it's cool. Like, I just think it's one of those things where some people are going to hate it, some people are going to love it, and it's just a tool, right? It's a tool, and I think everybody has the opportunity to use it, right? And I do think in a way it helps to balance the playing field. Yeah.
I think this is a very, very interesting way to look at AI generally, because when you say the term AI in the broader society, one thing completely immediately comes to people's mind, which is jobs. And I think if you like work for a big gaming company, you might be concerned, but if you're a small gaming developer, then you are excited. So
Yeah.
I think it really opens a completely new battlefield. And as you mentioned, it balances the entire industry out, because people who just sit in front of their screen and earning like 80K, 90K per year without innovating that much, but just exist to be like a part of something super small, then these costs in that sense are cutted, whereas small talents will get a huge chance to enter this battlefield.
No, that's a great point. And so not only does it really enables small creators to excel, right? People who are really pushing the envelope and trying to create something unique, it gives them a chance to have an advantage, right? But at the same time, people have to stay ahead, right? You better be better than the computer, right? If you want to win in this game, if you want to get jobs, if you want to be able to create something, you've got to bring more to the table than just going through the motions, right? I think that's a fantastic point because in a sense, it pushes the whole industry forward because now the standard isn't, minimum wage. Like, well, I can bring this guy in as an intern or for minimum wage or whatever, and he'll just get the job done, right? The standard is like zero, right? It's your internet connection, right? We can do the bottom level stuff with an AI. We don't need a person. It's just going to cost us bandwidth, right? And so you better be able to do more than just the floor, right? So I think it really is going to push the whole industry forward. It's like when somebody breaks the 4-minute mile, right? Suddenly everybody sees that. And then in the following year, 5 other people do it, right? It had never been done before, never in the history of in recorded history. And yet, as soon as it happens, everyone realizes this is possible. Same thing's going to happen with, the creative industry. People are going to start trying to solve new problems. And when people do that, we can create more exciting things. But it really does kind of like lift the floor and raise the standard.
Yeah, this conversation is about to change my view on AI completely because I think this really shows very, very significantly how much we can all benefit from AI because it will make our economy much more efficient. And to say we have to shut down innovation or something to protect jobs really, really speaks against that. And I think like what we just discussed, it makes so much sense also really for the small people to enter the battlefield. And yeah, you have to improve. There's like a nice American saying, grow the pie or die. And I think this is very true with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I say that as somebody who I'm not like a huge AI fanboy, right? Like I think it's cool and I think it's useful, right? And if a tool is useful, it can be used for both good or evil, right? Like yeah, people are going to do evil things with AI. They're going to make stuff that shouldn't be made. They're going to rip off people's, true and legitimate creative talent and all that stuff. And we shouldn't support that. But at the same time, it can be used for both, right? That's just how it is. So yeah, I really do believe that there's a lot of opportunity here because it's a really cool tool, just like computing, right? I built this big colorful mess over here, and I love the PC world, but this type of thing wouldn't exist. The hardware wasn't as accessible as it is now. So again, just it's technology, it's a tool. Use it for whatever you can.
Yeah, very nice way to put it. But I think another thing we have to discuss now is you are a blockchain. You also experiment with AI, and when AI came up for the first time, lots of crypto bros were a little bit disappointed because they thought, oh, now AI is the hottest narrative in town, and maybe it will make crypto a little bit more irrelevant. But I think the opposite is true. AI needs crypto, and crypto needs AI. So the example what I've mentioned in the beginning with the interview where Cristiano Ronaldo talks not so nice things about Lionel Messi,
Right.
I think the blockchain is the instrument to prove that the source code was not correct. So to prove, okay, this message did not come from Washington, but from Beijing. Ryan Selkis wrote this in his thesis for 2024. So what's your take on that?
No, 100%. Yeah, again, they're both tools, right? And the spoon does not lose from the invention of the fork, right? It's like you use them for different things, and I think they're wildly complementary. Akash is a great example, right? When you're talking about like, well, the needs of AI require all sorts of computing. So how do we allow the computing world to excel and grow? Well, by democratizing it through blockchain access, right? And same thing with the reverse, right? I think AI is going to contribute to blockchain, right? Being able to imagine the average person being able to analyze a smart contract with an AI because I can't read Rust, right? And I don't know how to interpret this thing and whether or not it's malicious, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for people to be able to leverage both. I think it's just, the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, and I think this is a very, very good way to close the discussion around AI and go back to crypto once again. Now let's dive deeper into crypto gaming, because for the very first time I've heard about crypto gaming, this was in 2021, 2022, and I also started to play a game. It was called Mars Colony on Harmony, and it was the most pain in the ass to bridge my tokens to the MetaMask wallet, interact with the
Yep.
game, and to be honest, it was, I think, the shittiest game I've ever played. There was just a huge surface of the Mars. The UX was really, really bad. Still, I played it every day because I was able to make a lot of money with some NFTs, and speculating was really the peak of the bull market.
Yeah.
So how can we basically prevent those mistakes from the past, where we have to make people incentivized to play a game, but not because the game is nice, but just because the game pays you a lot of money? But
Right.
obviously this also has limits. So what is your take on this?
I mean, fortunately, that kind of stuff has to die because it's not sustainable, right? You can't pay somebody to play your game. That doesn't exist except in this weird world of crypto fantasy money, right? Where we can just print money out of nothing because people are speculating wildly, right? And it becomes this kind of Ponzi scheme of who's going to be the last one out. So, that stuff has to die. It's not sustainable, fortunately. We'll probably run into a good number of those still, nonetheless. And you're going to have a lot of people. This is part of the problem. Was it's really easy to make something that looks cool, especially now in this world of AI, right? The ability to create exciting content where you can show something that doesn't exist is bigger than ever. As a CGI guy, I know how easy that is. I say easy. Making good stuff is still expensive, but it's not complicated, right? So if you have money, you can do it. Making a game, especially a game that's like fun to play, is complicated. And it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, right? Sorry, Logan Paul, but like you can't just throw money at a game and expect, whatever the zoo thing was to take off, right? And probably he didn't even throw enough money at it, right? It's one of those things where it's like people don't know what they're getting into and they say, we're going to make a game. We're going to make a metaverse, right? On as a bullet point on this roadmap that was just pulled out of somebody's, right? And so it's one of those things where I think we have to have time for the market to mature, where for one, people are more discerning and they don't just hop into everything that looks cool. But I think it's also important, like, look around you, who's still here, right? And those are the people who have been here for how many years, right? We started in the Web3 space in Cosmos in 2021. And we'd been building, kind of preparing for that since, early in 2021. And building outside of the Web3 space since 2017, right? Specifically building Passage since 2020. So whatever, point being, look at the people who are still building, because anybody who keeps building will eventually, create something awesome. Because that's all it is, right? It's perseverance, it's persistence. But the people who are just here to make a buck are going to run out of money, or they're going to just take the money and run, right? So the people who stick around, those are the ones who are learning, who are adapting, who are creating. And you have to have that process. Nobody's going to get it right the first time. Like, for all the people who have seen the way our roadmap has changed, the way the timelines have gotten pushed, right? People know things change over time, right? There's so many things we're going to learn. Nobody's going to get it right away. But that's okay, because it's just, look at the people who are continuing to innovate and continuing to learn. It's a new space. That's the biggest thing, right? This is totally new. And you can't just say, like, well, give it to the gaming people. The problem was a lot of the gaming people are very resistant to adopt the technology. And then on the flip side, the people who adopted the technology didn't know jack squat about how to build a game. So there's this period of time where eventually these things have to come closer together, where, the Web3 people understand how to make a good game because they've learned, and the gaming people understand Web3 because they've learned. And eventually you get somebody who makes something cool. And I think this is the year for it, really, because, it takes a couple of years to make a really solid game. I mean, you can make something that's like fun for a while in less than a year. But if you want to make something that's really an exciting experience, that can be super sticky and get a lot of traction, it's going to take time, right? And the studios that could even possibly do that, like it took a while for those to even exist, right? Because again, the first ones are either crypto bros who don't know anything about gaming or vice versa, right? So this is the year for it. I really do believe 2024 is the year that we're going to see some of the first games that are really interesting, right? Like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's fun to play. And also abstract away the Web3 nonsense, right? Figure out how to give people ownership without all this technical debt, right? Where it's like, I got to figure out how many layers of like wallet and chains and like, oh, I'm on a layer 2 and not a layer 1. So like, how do I send ETH over there? Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and the whole onboarding process is going to be smoothed out. And I really do think Cosmos is frankly the best space for that. But this is the year for it. I really do believe seeing stuff like, I think it's called Dead Drop, stuff that, the live streamers are working on, right? Like this different, there's a Web3 extraction shooter, right? I feel like that's the kind of stuff that's like, oh, that could get traction, right? Because they've been building for a while, right? So these are the things that I'm kind of looking forward to this year. I also think we're going to start to see some of the big studios flip. In the background, every single one of these large studios has had to ask a question about NFTs and crypto and Web3, right? And just from my own personal experience, I know who's talking about it and that people are going to be, flipping the narrative, right? And the consumers are just going to basically follow along, right? They can complain all they want on Reddit about, oh, NFTs are a scam. But if the next Call of Duty incorporates NFTs, everyone's still going to play it, right? Because that's just where people are going. So that's what we want to see. We want to see adoption at a higher level. But again, I think it hasn't been possible until recently. So yeah, now's the time for the good games.
Yeah, you basically answered my next question, which would have been, will gaming be a big narrative of 2024? You answered this question very, very drastically. And also, you're not the only one screaming this from the roof. So I think this was also part of Ryan Selkis' thesis for 2024, that gaming will be a big, big narrative of 2024. But since you are not only gaming blockchain in that sense, but also a metaverse blockchain. The metaverse was a huge narrative in late 2021, beginning of 2022. I mean, Facebook changed its name to Meta, which was super crazy to see back then. So the growth of the metaverse was pretty rapid. But what about the future? So could you imagine that also the metaverse could become one of the narratives of 2024, or will we see this more in 2025-ish? So yeah, what's your take, and what are your thoughts on the comeback of the metaverse?
Yeah. It's all going to depend on whether or not somebody does it right. Because narratives are created when people tell a good story. That's it. And there doesn't have to be a punchline, unfortunately, right? Like a lot of these stories have gone unfinished, right? The narrative began, but it wasn't complete. Nobody's made a good metaverse so far, right? Nobody has completed and delivered a metaverse that was interesting, sticky, where people would actually come back continually, where there was a growth in users, where people didn't just totally bail as soon as the bear market hit, right? Nobody's created a metaverse that was profitable or sustainable, right? There is no revenue in the metaverse, right? So it's who's going to throw money at something that has just proven to burn cash, right? All of the sponsorships, all of the, whether it's Nike or your favorite music artist or whoever, right? Like they showed up, they put their face on it, and everything still went to nothing, right? There is no good metaverse play thus far. But that's where narratives come from. People have to recognize narratives don't come out of nowhere, right? Somebody tells that story and it gets into, the ecosystem, it gets into the community. And so the question is, who's going to tell the story, right? So if somebody creates a really cool metaverse, if they do something new, right, that's what's going to spark the narrative, right? That's where those narratives come from. And people have to believe it, right? So it can't just be another Decentraland, another sandbox where it's like, we're going to sell land. It's going to be awesome. We know it's not going to be awesome. We've seen that it wasn't awesome, right? Because the problem was you tried to build the world, right? And tell everybody to come for all of the reasons, right? Everything cool is going to be happening here. And they showed up and nobody was there because there wasn't one thing to do. People just want one thing. And that's why Passage is different. That's why I think we can help spark a new kind of narrative in Metaverse that is, one, sticky and interesting, right? Passage is 100% built around collaborators and creators and builders, right? So teams who, Passage as a tool for teams, right, as a metaverse for enterprise, for collaboration, is incredibly sticky, right? How much do teams pay for an Adobe subscription, right? How much do teams pay for, there's a lot of money in collaboration. How much do teams pay in overhead for a building, right? We have had everybody from like AAA gaming studios to we've had architectural teams, we've had colleges tell us we want to use this because we have remote programs, we have remote collaboration, we have a need to be able to interact in this virtual space more meaningfully, right? Whether it's an art director being able to review a level design for a game without having to go and download from Plastic, right? Get the repo, update, sync. Hey, I've got the wrong change set, like whatever, things like that. They just get a link and they jump in with their team and they're leaving notes on, hey, this needs to be brighter, this needs to be a different color, whatever. All the way to architectural visualization where somebody in your new Zoom call, right, in Passage, you just pull in the building schematics, pop it up in 3D, you spin it around, like, hey, this is what this looks like. We need to add, something here. Check this for compliance, whatever. And then again, for education. So that's sticky. That's the sticky part of it, is that it starts with the places where there's already money, revenue, right, where people are already spending on this and it actually improves their life. And you got to collaborate with your team every day. If you can do it better in Passage, that's sticky, right? Same thing with on the revenue side. Passage totally changes the narrative on revenue because we're not pitching to, yes, there is totally revenue in entertainment, right? In the Fortnite experience where it's totally free, everybody jumps in and they're just paying for like cool customizations, right? Like you went to the concert and you got the cool t-shirt, right? So there's revenue in that 100%. But so few people can actually do that, can actually replicate that, because you need that level of talent. You need an existing user base like Fortnite, right? Where is that for the enterprise world, right? Where is that for consumers, for business, right? For other applications? And the problem is people haven't gathered in one space yet. Fortnite already had the user base, right? That wasn't the problem. They didn't have to acquire users. They just held the event. And that's the right idea. That's what you want to do. You want to go where the people already are. And so for us, that's where we steal market cap from Zoom, right? We're going where the people are. And so we're bringing the metaverse to remote collaboration, to enterprise. That's going to be sticky. Now, as soon as any metaverse has real revenue and a sustainable growth model, then the possibilities are endless, right? Because then you already have people there. If we can get 1,000 businesses, right, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, right, into Passage, then you can sell them something else. Then you can say, hey, come to this entertainment thing after work, right? Hey, here's a game you guys can play as a team, right? And so suddenly you already have people here, like Discord, like Zoom, like Google Meet. People are already there. Now you can add the other stuff, right? It was like Facebook games, right? Why were games on Facebook such a cool thing when we were like 13, 14, right? It's because people were already hanging out there. It's not because the games were like some wild new thing. It was because your friends were already there, right? Imagine if Steam had a truly robust community tool, right? The like friend interaction on Steam is pretty lame, right? We're still talking in Discord because Steam has got to get their act together. So it's one of those things where you go where the people are, and you have to start somewhere where there's already a real revenue opportunity. People have just been kind of like throwing something into the wind. And it's always been this weird mix of like, is this a game? Is this an event? Like it doesn't really know what it is. So we're targeting a very specific audience to create something that is sticky because there's a real demand there. And we've literally already talked with the people who have tried out Passage. They've seen the price point and they've said, yes, we've got a small group in our wait list. We have over 3,000 people on the wait list, but we have a small group within that that's going to be launching with the kind of like MVP product this quarter. And we're going to be testing kind of internally with this private group because, again, we've already seen it. And we've been using Passage for our own team as well. So it's an incredibly sticky experience because we already see the demand and how people are using it.
Yeah, I think you also highlighted very well one of the biggest mistakes that we have seen in the development of the metaverse in the early days, because all of a sudden so many projects popped up about things that should be figured out after the metaverse is big and people speculated on land in the metaverse. There's nothing much to speculate if no one wants to use this land. I think you highlighted this pretty quickly. But yeah, since we're getting also closer to the hour, can you talk a little bit about what's to come with Passage now in the next couple of months, and basically answer the question that a lot of people have: how to start, when to start. So when can people actually go on your website and start to play the game as we have just seen it in the demo?
Soon, very soon. So right now, the first thing we're doing, and the key is we've got kind of a key seed that we're launching, right? The goal here is we don't want to create a thing that nobody wants. And we've done a lot of product market fit testing, right? This same experience that we're delivering to our waitlist has already been bought and paid for in the six figures by large studios and brands that we've worked with in the past, right? We hosted Passage events that people would write six-figure checks, to do a weekend event or to do a 30-day event, much less to have an ongoing space that they can use for collaboration with their team and things like that. And so really our goal when we saw the demand was, how do we bring this to everybody, right? The people who can't just write a six-figure check to build their world, right? So that was a big part of why we wanted to make this into a product that anybody could access. We're bringing those exact same tools to our waitlist, but it starts with testing with a small group. We've had our alpha testers in kind of the dashboard experience. They've jumped into Passage Worlds. They haven't been able to get their hands on the world builder, but everyone has seen me and Abby go in and actually build a world together, right? So the alpha testers have seen what it looks like to drag and drop these pieces in live inside Unreal in a simplified interface. It's really cool. So we've gone through the alpha testing. The next phase is launching with kind of a small group from our waitlist and going through some iteration. Everyone's going to get to see what does it look like for a business to use Passage on the daily, right? We're going to be sharing kind of behind the scenes of teams getting into this, how are teams using this, show you guys what are the use cases and what are we learning about this, right? We have, kind of a vision for what we believe the roadmap needs to be going forward. When do we launch the world building tools? When do we launch, different NFT utilities? But a lot of that's going to be dictated by what we actually see people needing and using and what will people pay for, right? Maybe it's more important that people have an integration with Google Calendar or Slack or whatever so that they can integrate their workflows. So those are the types of things we're figuring out. That's a big focus of this quarter and next quarter. My hope is that Q2, we're going to be able to start opening things up, right? Where we'll be able to start getting more people in, both from the waitlist and from the public. But a lot of that's just going to depend on, what are the things that we learn, what are the things we find out. Again, we want this to be a learning process, and we'd much rather bring people along for the ride and have people validate the ideas and prove that this is a sticky revenue driving opportunity, right? Rather than just go out with our best guess and deliver something that people don't actually want. So it'll be a process, but as people know from our past, you're going to be able to spectate the whole thing and laugh and cry with us along the way, because we'll be sharing behind the scenes of what this looks like in application with real businesses, and then opening this up further as we have kind of the tool solidified, as we've polished the workflow, so that it's a good experience for all the people who are jumping in with zero knowledge, right? When somebody just jumps in off the landing page, off the website, from an ad or whatever it may be, you don't want them to have a bad experience in Web3, right? You want to make sure that this is a polished experience. So we're going to first abuse our family on the wait list, right? All of our community members, and make sure that we've polished everything up and that this feels good before we go and air it out to the public.
And for all of the people who now got ignited by all of this, what's a good way to start with Passage? How to get involved? How to join the waitlist? Maybe you can share your socials.
Go on the website, passage.io, jump on the waitlist. It's that simple. The waitlist is growing rapidly. There will be kind of an order of operations, right? We had some people who got in early and who we were able to do personal interviews. This is teams like Decentralized in the music space. We've got partners like Royce to 59 also in the music space. It's funny how that's like been a big trend. I don't know, man. Musicians are innovators, I guess. But then we're opening up more opportunities as we get further. Just jumping on the waitlist is all you have to do, right? If you want to be apprised of more alpha opportunities, we even just brought in new alpha testers within the last couple of weeks when we did this big, Winter's Rise event in the Strange Clan community. And so there's going to be opportunities for more people to alpha test, jump in the Discord. That's the best way to kind of like, and those people have gotten hands-on. They were able to jump in the Strange Clan early on. They jumped in the Strange Clan world. They were able to jump in. Some people have been in the gym, was our first like collaboration space that people have probably seen on socials. They've been in Blockhouse for like our community hangouts. They've been in Huawaverse, the Chihuahua metaverse. So the alpha testers definitely get, early eyes on stuff, but they also get abused, right? Like they get to jump into all the glitchy stuff. So if you're ready for that, then also jump in the Discord as well as the waitlist, and you'll get eyes on, as much as is possibly available.
You heard it here first, and as always, you can find all of the mentioned links in the description below. And with that being said, Lex, thank you so much for joining us today and
pleasure.
sharing your thoughts on AI, on the gaming narrative, but also the roadmap of Passage and what's up ahead. So yeah, thank you so much, and I guess I see you in Denver.
Yes, sir. Yop it up, fam, and stay dragon. Peace.